This happened about 5 years ago, not long after my sister moved out of our family's house. She had just graduated college and got her first real job, which meant she was able to rent a small apartment across town. It wasn't far, but still felt like a big shift, like she was officially on her own. When she packed up her stuff to move out, she left a lot of boxes behind in the attic. Old schoolwork, childhood toys, seasonal clothes. The usual stuff you tell yourself you'll come back for, but never do. Among the things she left was a porcelain doll she'd had since we were kids. One of those older ones with a hand-painted face, glassy eyes, and a fancy little dress with lace on it. The kind that looks like it belongs behind a glass case, not in a toy chest. She used to call it Marnie. Even when we were kids, I never liked that doll. It didn't scare me exactly, but it made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't really explain. Like it was too lifelike, too still. It always sat in the same place in her room, propped up in the corner on a little wicker chair, facing the door like it was watching whoever came in. I'm a couple years younger than her, and once she moved out, I ended up taking her old room. It was the biggest bedroom besides our parents and had the best window view, so I didn't mind. I moved in, rearranged the furniture, put up some posters, made it mine. At first, everything felt normal, but the attic access was in a hallway just outside my bedroom door, one of those square pull-down hatches with a folding wooden ladder. Every time I passed underneath it, I got this weird feeling. Not like paranoia exactly, but more like pressure, like something was up there, watching. About 2 months in, I started hearing things at night. Soft, rhythmic bumps, not loud, just subtle taps coming from the ceiling, like something knocking gently on the attic floor. At first, I figured it had to be animals. The house was older, and we'd had mice and squirrels in the walls before, so I brushed it off, but the sounds kept happening. Not every night, just enough to unsettle me. And it always seemed to happen after midnight, usually between 2 and 4 a.m. I'd lie there awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it. The faint tap, tap, tap like something pacing or knocking, always overhead. One Saturday night, I decided to stop freaking myself out and just check the attic. I grabbed a flashlight, pulled the ladder down, and climbed up. I wasn't expecting anything, but I also wanted to prove to myself that it was just insulation settling or something harmless. The attic was dusty and full of old junk. Suitcases, holiday decorations, boxes with fading labels. But right near the entrance, sitting neatly on top of a crate, was Marnie, the doll. I stopped cold. I remembered clearly that my sister had packed her away years ago. She was supposed to be sealed up inside a box somewhere deeper in the attic. But here she was, sitting out in the open, facing the attic hatch. I climbed back down, closed the attic, and called my sister the next day. I asked if she'd come by recently, maybe looking for something. She laughed it off. "No, I haven't been back since I moved," she said. "That doll? You can just throw her out if you want. I don't care." So that's what I did. That night, I grabbed a trash bag, put Marnie inside, tied it shut, and took it out the garbage bin by the street. I remember tossing the bag in and feeling kind of relieved, like I'd just gotten rid of a curse. I know that sounds dramatic, but the house felt lighter somehow. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of noise, it was dead silent. But I kept getting this awful sense that something was off. Like someone was standing right outside my door, just listening. Around 3:30 a.m., I finally got up. I opened my door and looked into the hallway. Empty. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop. The attic door was open. The ladder wasn't fully extended, but it had been pulled down just slightly. Enough that it hung there, not quite closed, not quite open. Like someone had pulled it down partway and changed their mind. I stood there for what felt like forever, staring at it. There was no way it had fallen open on its own. That thing needed a pretty good tug to pull down, and I knew for a fact I hadn't touched it. Eventually, I closed it and went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I kept listening for footsteps or breathing or anything. The next day, garbage pickup came. I watched the truck take the bin and crush the contents. I figured that was the end of it. But a few days later, I opened my closet to grab a hoodie, and felt something underfoot. I looked down and saw the doll, Marnie, lying on the floor under a pile of clothes. At first, I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at it. My mind tried to come up with every rational explanation. Maybe the garbage bag ripped open, maybe my parents saw it and brought it back inside without telling me. But none of it made sense. I called my sister again, borderline accusing her of messing with me. She got weirdly serious all of a sudden and told me, I haven't been back to that house. I wouldn't joke about that. She offered a FaceTime right then to prove she was home. She sounded freaked out too. I believed her. This time, I didn't just throw the doll out. I put her in a cardboard box, sealed it shut with duct tape, and drove across town to one of those big donation bins outside of Goodwill. You know, the kind, metal, with a heavy sliding door. I tossed the box in, closed the bin, and drove away without looking back. That night, I actually slept. Same with the next few nights. It felt like whatever was happening had stopped. But then, about a week later, I came home from work, walked into my room, and froze. My closet door was open again, and sitting right in the center of my bed, not lying down, but upright, with her legs crossed like someone had carefully posed her, was Marnie. That was it for me. I packed an overnight bag and went to stay with a friend. My parents helped me apartment hunt that same week. I moved out of that house within a month and haven't been back since. I still have no idea how that doll kept coming back. I never saw anyone break in. Nothing else in the house was touched. Just the doll, always appearing exactly where I'd see her, always arranged like she was waiting. My sister won't even talk about Marnie now. Anytime I bring it up, she just shakes her head and changes the subject. And she refuses to keep dolls in her house anymore, not even decorative ones. She says they make her feel like something's still watching her. Maybe it's all in our heads. Maybe someone really did sneak in and play some kind of elaborate prank. But to this day, I swear I never found a single sign of forced entry. And the way that doll kept coming back, it felt like something else entirely. If this story creeped you out even a little, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life horror stories just like this. Story 2 is coming next. Stay tuned. I manage a few rental properties in my hometown. Nothing major, just 3 small single-family homes I maintain on my own. I'm not a big-time landlord or anything, just someone who grew up in this area and figured real estate was a smart long-term investment. This happened last year in one of the older houses I own. It's a modest 1-story ranch-style place built in the late 60s. Quiet street, decent yard, nothing too fancy. The kind of place you'd pass 100 times without giving it a second thought. It had never given me any trouble. No plumbing issues, no break-ins, no strange tenants. Until this, a tenant had just moved out after staying for nearly 2 years. Real solid guy, quiet, punctual with rent, barely ever called me. When he said he was relocating out of state for work, I wished him well and didn't think twice. A few days later, I went to the house to do the usual inspection and prep before listing it again. That's when I noticed something odd in the back bedroom closet. It was a doll, small, plastic, definitely old. Maybe 10 inches tall, with faded yellow hair and a scuffed pink dress. It was dirty, like it had been buried in the ground or left outside in the rain. It just sat there on the floor of the closet, arms outstretched slightly, like it had been carefully posed that way. Its face was the worst part. One eye was permanently half shut, the other scratched and cloudy. Its mouth was open just enough to show the tips of tiny plastic teeth. It didn't make any sense. My last tenant lived alone, no kids, no girlfriend with kids, and definitely no reason to keep a doll like that. I figured he must have found it in the attic and forgot to throw it out. Still, it gave me a weird feeling. I didn't want to touch it at first. I ended up using a rag to pick it up and dropped it into the outside trash bin behind the house. Didn't think much of it after that. The next morning, I came back to finish painting the living room. I was by myself, just me, a drop cloth, and a podcast in my earbuds. Everything felt normal at first. I finished cutting in the corners, then went to grab a roller from the hallway closet. When I opened the door, I literally took a full step backward. There it was, the doll, sitting upright on the floor of the closet, in a completely different room. Same bent arms, same faded pink dress, same one I half closed. I stared at it for at least a solid 10 seconds, trying to process it. The trash bin had already been emptied that morning by the sanitation crew. I checked. I convinced myself it was a different toy. Had to be. Maybe I just didn't see this one yesterday. I leaned in closer. That's when I noticed the right foot was missing a chunk of plastic, scuffed in the exact same spot. It was the same doll. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't even text my girlfriend about it. I was embarrassed, honestly. I told myself maybe I had somehow tossed it in the wrong bin and someone found it and stuck it back in the house. Unlikely, but it was the only explanation that didn't make me feel crazy. I took the doll again. This time, I didn't throw it away nearby. I drove to the outskirts of town, where there's a wooded area with a steep ravine. I parked, walked about 50 yards into the woods, and tossed the doll down into the thick brush. It disappeared into the undergrowth, and I made sure I couldn't see where it landed. I even stayed for a few minutes, just to be sure nothing moved. That was supposed to be the end of it. A few days passed. I returned to the house to meet with a young couple interested in renting. We did a short walkthrough. Everything seemed fine until I went to unlock the small shed in the backyard to show them the storage space. The second I opened the door, I felt my chest tighten. There, sitting on top of a box of leftover tile samples, was the doll. Same dirt-stained dress, same broken eye, same faintly parted mouth. I didn't even react. I just shut the door and turned to the couple. There's been some raccoon activity out here. I lied. We'll have to reschedule the tour. They left. I took the doll again, holding it like it was made of glass. I didn't say a word. That night, I drove out to the bridge that runs over the Hudson tributary. No one was around. I walked to the center, looked over the railing, and threw the doll into the dark water below. I stayed and watched it bob, then disappear into the current. I even whispered to myself, "Stay gone." Another week passed. I didn't go near the house. I just needed space from the whole thing. But eventually I had to go back. I still needed to list it, and it had been sitting empty. When I pulled up, everything looked normal. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. I don't know how else to explain it. The air was too still. The house was cold, even though it was mid-May. There was a faint smell like old water and plastic. I checked each room, one by one. Nothing seemed out of place, until I reached the back bedroom. The closet was empty, but on the bed, on top of the comforter, which hadn't been touched in weeks, were dusty, child-sized footprints, like bare feet had walked across the mattress. And at the edge of the bed was a single plastic arm, just the arm, from the elbow down. It had been torn off cleanly, but the fingers were the same, delicately curved, with tiny painted nails. The same cracked fingernail on the right index finger. That was enough for me. I locked the house and left. I didn't even clean up. I sold the place a few months later to a couple from out of state. I didn't tell them anything. I figured they wouldn't believe me if I did. Hell, I wouldn't believe me. I haven't been back since. But sometimes I drive past that street. I keep my eyes forward. But sometimes I glance at the house. I try not to, but I do. And I swear, just once or twice, I've seen a small figure in the window of the back room, just standing there, perfectly still, watching. If you're still watching this with the lights off, you're braver than most. Hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy creepy real-life stories like these. The final haunted doll story is next. You're not going to want to miss it. This happened to my sister's best friend, Alyssa, during her sophomore year of college. She transferred to a university in upstate New York and ended up moving into an off-campus house she found through a roommate board. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-story Victorian-era place. Cheap rent, old bones, slightly lopsided floors. You know the type. The kind of house that looks normal enough during the day, but starts to feel too quiet at night. There were 3 other girls living there when she moved in, Emma, Grace, and Taylor. They weren't super close friends, more like friendly acquaintances sharing a roof. Everyone kept mostly to themselves. Alyssa's room was on the top floor, tucked into the back corner of the house, right next to the attic door. It was the smallest room, barely wide enough for a twin bed and a dresser, but she didn't mind. She liked small spaces, or at least she thought she did. From the first day, something about the attic bothered her. It had one of those old pull-down ladders in the ceiling. The wood was worn and splintered, and it always seemed to be slightly ajar, even when she pushed it up firmly. She mentioned hearing faint thumps up there at night, soft, irregular sounds, like something shuffling or dragging. Her roommates just shrugged it off. Old house, probably squirrels or the heating system knocking around. That explanation worked at first. About 2 months in, Alyssa started noticing small things in her room out of place. Her desk chair would be slightly turned when she came back from class. Her makeup bag would be unzipped when she knew she hadn't used it. One time, her socks were rearranged in her drawer, rolled the opposite way she usually folded them. Nothing was missing, just altered. Subtly, at first, she blamed herself. Maybe she was just tired. She was balancing school, a part-time job, and trying to maintain a long-distance relationship. But the little things kept happening. Then it got weirder. She started finding her phone charger in places it had no business being. Tucked under her pillow, stuffed in her dirty laundry, one time even on the attic ladder's first rung. It was like something or someone was deliberately moving it around. One night in late October, after a late shift at the campus bookstore, she came home just past midnight. The house was quiet. Lights were off. She went up to her room, and as soon as she opened the door, she felt this immediate, unnatural cold hit her in the face. Not like someone left the window open. It was colder than that. Still, she checked. Both windows were locked, no draft. The radiator was warm. The hallway was fine. But inside her room, it felt like the air had dropped 20 degrees. She flicked on the light, and everything looked normal until she glanced at her bed. Sitting right in the center of her pillow was a doll. Not a store-bought one. Not something anyone would confuse with a toy. It looked handmade, crudely sewn together with dull beige fabric, a stitched mouth that curved unevenly across its face, button eyes that didn't match. Thick black yarn had been sewn into its scalp like hair, hanging in limp strands. Its arms were outstretched, like it was waiting to be picked up. She froze. Every part of her body screamed to get out. Instead, she ran downstairs, heart pounding, and confronted her roommates. But none of them admitted to knowing anything about the doll. Grace and Taylor laughed it off, said it was probably some weird prank. But Emma didn't laugh. She barely even looked at it. She went pale and got really quiet. When Alyssa asked her what was wrong, she finally said it reminded her of something her grandmother used to talk about, a witness doll. In some old Eastern European traditions, witness dolls were meant to sit quietly in a room and watch, not protect. Watch. They were said to observe the living, silently reporting what they saw to something else. Emma wouldn't say more. She just told Alyssa to get rid of it. That night, Alyssa tossed the doll in the outside garbage bin and slept on the living room couch. The next morning, around 7 a.m., she went upstairs to grab some clothes for class. The doll was back. Same place, same pose, right in the center of her pillow, like it never left. She stood there, frozen in the doorway for what felt like forever. Her skin went cold. Her legs wanted to back away, but her eyes were locked on the thing. Eventually, she just closed the door and went to class wearing the same clothes from the day before. That night, she didn't go back upstairs. She slept in her car, parked in the driveway, under 2 blankets. That's when she started seriously suspecting one of her roommates was messing with her. Maybe Emma, given her weird reaction. So she bought a phone tripod and set up her iPhone to record overnight. She positioned it across the room, propped on her desk, angled directly at the bed. She even did a sweep of the room on camera to show that the doll was gone before she started recording. The next morning, she played back the footage. For the first 3 hours, it was nothing but stillness, just the sound of the house settling. Then at 3:12 a.m., the screen flickered. Just a single frame of static. and then something moved near the attic door. Alyssa paused the video, rewound, slowed it down. There, in the upper corner of the frame, something shifted. It wasn't a person, not exactly. It was a silhouette of something small and squat, with long arms and a large head. No features, no eyes, just a faint black outline that stepped forward and then vanished again. Then the screen flickered once more, and suddenly, the doll was there. One frame, it wasn't. The next, it was sitting upright on the bed, facing the camera, arms open, head slightly tilted, as if it had been there the whole time. That was it for Alyssa. She didn't wait for a second night. She broke her lease, packed only what she could carry in one trip, and moved out the next day. She left behind her bed, her dresser, most of her clothes. She didn't care. She said she felt something watching her as she packed. She even heard the faint creak of the attic door as she carried her boxes down the stairs. She refuses to talk about the doll now. She won't describe it, won't say where the footage is. All she says is, it never blinked, never moved in front of her, but she could feel it watching, judging, waiting, and she believes completely that if she had stayed even one more night, it wouldn't have just sat there. It would have climbed down from the bed. If you made it to the end of that story, consider yourself lucky. Some people say haunted dolls are just myths, but if one ever shows up in your room uninvited, maybe don't stick around to find out what it wants. If this story creeped you out even a little, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life horror stories every single week. Thanks for watching, and be careful what you bring into your house. Some things don't want to be thrown away. Some things just wait until you're alone.